Hi! So as it turns out, July has 5 Mondays in it. So we have to do a 5th video this month. One of the things that Matt and I were talking about doing, and some people on our guarantee group on Facebook liked the idea and encouraged us to do this, is we wanted to show our artifact collections. So we're breaking it down into 3 different videos. The first one is going to specifically be the Olympic class. Any items specifically related to the Titanic, Olympic, or the Britannic. The next video, and I don't know when we're going to do it, but the next video in this series is going to be White Star and Cunard Line artifacts. Any ship in the 2 companies' careers, or once the 2 companies have merged and became Cunard White Star. And then the third and final video is going to be ocean liners or ships in general, or just any other artifacts we think you guys might be interested in. Now, the definition of the artifacts we're showing, because we both have countless items, some tacky souvenirs or some books related to the subject, the definition that we're sticking to for these videos is either directly from the ship, a direct artifact, or a very good reproduction. Matt's collection, you're going to be seeing in a moment, blows mine away when it comes to the Olympic class. But what I'm going to focus a little bit on to start with are some of the pieces you guys might be familiar with. And number one, I would not consider this to be a premier part of my collection, to say the least. However, because a lot of people we talk to say, hey, I have a piece of coal from the Titanic, I decided I'm going to say a little bit about it. Yes, we do have coal, and I mean this very respectfully. Everyone has coal from the Titanic in their collection. It is genuine. It's very easy to get. These were salvaged during a 1994 expedition. It is the only artifact recovered from the wreck that you can legally purchase. It is illegal for a private entity to own anything salvaged from the wreck site of the Titanic, with the exception of coal. And they were sold off as a fundraiser to fund future expeditions. So when these first came out, they were like $20. You can get them pretty easily. That's how I got mine. Matt has some, Kyle has some. They're a great starter piece for anyone who wants to do a Titanic or Olympic class collection. Usually they come with a certificate of authenticity signed by the company that did the salvage work. You can legally own other things from the wreck or from the Titanic in general, but they cannot be from the wreck site. If something was salvaged from the water after the ship went down, or a survivor took off the ship with them, or it was on the ship and then taken off before the ship departed, that's all fair game. However, brought up from the ocean floor in the 80s or 90s, that you cannot legally own, with the exception of coal. This item, I'll be honest with you, is just tacky gift shop merchandise, but I think it's cool, and it's fairly authentic. It's a bar of soap. You can smell it, you can hold it, you can use it if you want, I don't. But it is the famous Venolia Auto Toilet Soap.
For the first-class passengers, mark you, the rest don't wash, of course.
Even though this is just a cheap gift shop item, I especially appreciate it, because how many other ways can you actually smell the Titanic? You can see it, you can feel it with these artifacts, but you can't ever truly smell it, unless you're Bill Sauter.
Soap is no laughing matter.
I have no idea where I got this from. They were sold on board the ship, and they had RMS Titanic 1912 on the bottom of them. It's a lead replica of the ship. It's about 4 inches long. I have no idea where I got it from, but it's pretty neat. I'm not saying it's an original. It probably is not, but I've seen replica ones, and this does not look like the replicas. Matt has all sorts of wood from the Olympic, which I'm a little envious of. I, however, have only one Olympic original piece. It's this original swimming pool tile. It says on the back Villeroy and Bach Metlac, which was the makers of the tile. This was taken off when the Olympic was being scrapped. There's a couple of postcards. Postcards are actually quite easy to come by. If it's specifically the Titanic, like this memorial postcard, they usually do fetch a pretty penny. Olympics are a little bit easier to come by. I have a few more Olympics, but I can't actually find them for this video. But this one I particularly liked because it's the RMS Olympic at Southampton. And you guys know I have a soft spot for Southampton. This piece is a rivet from the Titanic. It's a replica, though. From what I understand, this was a limited run a few years back, by a Titanic historian named Daniel Allen Butler. These rivets were actually the test subjects in a documentary where they tested to see if the Titanic had weak steel or not. They're quite heavy, and 3 million of these were used to put the Titanic together, and this is a replica of one of the smaller sized ones. Some of these were much larger. This artifact is proving to be one of my more useful Titanic items. I've used this for a lot of demonstrations, I've shown it to a bunch of people, and a few different museums have referred to it, and I've actually licensed the usage of this camera out a few times. This is the exact model that Father Francis Brown carried when he was on the Titanic. And of course, Francis Brown took some of the only photographs that exist from Titanic's maiden voyage. This is a Kodak Vp Camera, VP standing for vest pocket, because you're able to fold it right up and put it in your breast pocket of your vest. Now, this is actually a 1913 model. There's no significant differences externally. There's a couple little things on the inside, but the only big thing on the outside is it says 1913 instead of 1911. Actually, I think his was a 1912, to be honest with you. Either way, still no difference on the outside. This is the camera that Father Brown would have used, or the same model. Another item that I have that actually is an original piece is this block of wood. You guys saw the video from when our team went over to Belfast and we went to the gala and the Belfast Titanic Society convention. I actually won this in the auction, and this is a chunk of the deck planking from the SS Nomadic. When the ship was being converted in 2010 to be restored back to her original form, they took this off of the deck and cut it down, and they saved a few pieces, and this is one of those pieces. You can still see the fixative that was used to keep it fastened to the steel decking. The only other piece I have in my Olympic class collection that is actually worth mentioning is a model. Everyone has seen these 350 scale models of the Titanic, and a lot of people have built them. I built one myself, and it did not turn out this good. This model is a favorite piece of mine, not because of the craftsmanship, although it is built quite well and better than I can do, but because it was a gift from Park Stevenson. This was the first model of the Titanic that he built when he was younger. And it's been sitting in his parents' house since he moved out, and he gifted it to me about a year ago. So this is a piece that I very much cherish and have been taking care of.
Let's start from the bottom shelf, or the middle shelf actually, because the bottom shelf is just books and stuff, and the second shelf was books, but the second, whatever. Let's start from this shelf, because this is where I have some of my cooler stuff, I like to say. Some of my first class woodwork and everything. This panel here is a panel from a first class stateroom from Olympic. It is in the Georgian style. I believe it is late Georgian or early Georgian. I don't know which Georgian off the top of my head. It's cabin C86, and what's really cool about it is if we take a look at it, it was displayed, it was part of the paneling was vertical the long way. This was cut obviously by the seller, and what is really neat is when the lighting hits it perfectly, you can see the marks on it. So right here you can see 400 for Olympic, and you can see cabin C86, and this is the original carpentry marks back from 1910 when the ship was being fitted out. And this would have been mounted on the wall like this a long way, a very long panel all the way down. So that's pretty cool. And this is from a first class cabin C86. I just banged it, and it's okay to touch because it's wood, it's walnut, and it's pretty robust. So the next couple of pieces are all from a first class corridor in theory. I don't know about this tile segment, which is in pretty rough shape, but this little collection right here, these 4 pieces, are all from a first class corridor, a midships corridor. This I just figured out, I kind of put together, is from the skirting of the first class corridor. It's kind of the floorboard panel and the decorative molding that would run around the base of the corridor. So there'd be literally hundreds of yards worth of this paneling running all along the base of the corridor. is painted white. It has layers and layers of paint. If you look right here, you can see the actual shape of the wood and how it was milled in the shop. And I think it's made out of probably mahogany, or because it has to be a tougher wood, because it had to be sustained a lot of kicking, a lot of movement, because people are moving their luggage and carts and stuff throughout the corridors. Right here, there'd be a panel right underneath it, which would be the skirting board, but it would butt up against then the deckhand. But you'd find this tile right here, which was added to Olympic and probably one of the refits because it's green. On Titanic, this tile was white, and it had squared or diamond inserts of black here and an octagon tile of black in the middle. And that's been seen in the wreck site. So you can imagine that the corridors are white and black in Titanic. So that kind of goes together. And then on the ceiling for the corridors, you'd have this lot right here, these three. This would have originally been painted white. It's been the white paint, all the paint layers have been removed, so you can see the mahogany wood, which is quite nice. But this would be part of the trunking, which would hide all the cables and the pipes or what have you that would run down the length of the corridor to help outfit the first class cabins. And that would actually connect with, and all the segments would be hidden up with the joints with this little piece right here, this decorative element, which would have been finished off with a gilt or an ormolu finish. So this looks like it was just have been metal, but that's the material. It would have been finished out in gold and gilt, and you can see that pretty well replicated in our demos. If you go through the first class corridors, these brass swags, which have a finishing piece which continues right here down the way, break up the paneling on the ceiling because they are smaller segments and they have to be connected, and this is the connecting piece of those panels. So let's move up to the more, well, not the really, to the more interesting little pieces in my collection. Throughout all the staterooms in first class, you would get these Gimble Lamps, as they were called. Gimble Lamps because they were on a hinge. And what they could do is, I'm just going to take this one. This one right here is quite heavy, that's why I just made that noise. And it's made of bronze. And the cool thing about it was you can hang it on the wall on a hook next to your berth, next to your bunk, if you want light while you're in bed, you know, like you're reading a book. This was one of the plain ones, I'd imagine, because the first class ones were nickel plated and they'd have the white Star Line emblem right on the center of this decorative shield, I'm going to call it. This one doesn't have one, so I think it's not necessarily Olympic, but the Gimble lamp is quite famous, and that's why I grabbed that, and it was rather cheap. This one is a styled one. I haven't seen it in any Olympic class cabin, but it was cheaper than this, and I couldn't pass it up, and it's a lot heavier. I'm not going to even touch it. Now, this is the most impressive piece in my little collection of Olympic class items. This is, the seller did not know what it was. They knew it was a first class piece of wood from Olympic. I knew what it was, and I purchased it for next to nothing. And I could identify it because I knew the profile of it. This is actually the floorboard from the grand staircase. It's made of oak, and the polish has been removed because the paint has even been removed. You can see traces of the paint left on it in certain places. There's a giant nail on the back side sticking out right there. It's interesting. But yes, this is run along the base of the panelings, and somewhere in the grand staircase you'd have a dark piece of deckhand along the edge of this, which this would all sit against, and that would be what would be at the very bottom of the paneling. So this is my little piece of Olympic's grand staircase. It's not finished. I'm going to leave it that way.
Matt and I and the rest of the team, we don't really make any money from this project yet while we're still in the pre-funding phases. However, a lot of these pieces have been gifts to us or from the money that we do make through other side jobs or whatever. So whenever we do acquire a new artifact that goes into our collections, we all kind of share it a little bit. We send measurements and reference photos off to each other. And everything that we have in our own personal collections gets incorporated into the game. And a lot of these pieces have come in from generous people who we've been working with who have said, look, I've got this item from the Olympic. I want you to have it because I know it'll help you, and I know you guys will take good care of it. So that's where a lot of that stuff has come from. And I just wanted to say, any of you out there who have gifted us anything, we greatly appreciate that, and thank you very much.